All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this series. It's an emotional intelligence series. I am your host, Joanna Avon, also an emotional intelligence coach and recent book author, which I'm excited about. Woo! I'm going to big up my own self, but I am excited about it. It's been a project I've been working on for quite some time. And so I am just happy to be a part of this broadcast this evening. So listen, if this is the first time that you're joining, I want you to engage with us. Type inside the chat, where are you from? Where are you joining us from? We want you to be engaged in this conversation as well. The other thing about it is that I have a special guest on, and James is the author and public speaker for BPO recently with FIFA. And I'm just gonna just quickly just read a little bit of his bio before we get into the discussion, because I am so honored to have him on this podcast for this evening. Just to let you know, at least once a month, I'm going to be coming to you with different headliners. James, he specializes in so many different things, but tonight we're going to be talking specifically about leadership development. Okay. Next week, we're going to be bringing someone else on that's going to be talking about emotional intelligence as it relates to processing anger as kids are related. Then we're going to be talking about emotional intelligence from a serving standpoint if you're working in a ministry. There are so many ways. And the reason why I'm doing this is because a lot of people think emotional intelligence is something that you already have, like it's common sense, and nothing about emotional intelligence is common sense. And so I'm going to package emotional intelligence in a way that is going to be digestible and practical for whatever part of your life you are in. So, welcome to the show. I am so glad James is here. James has been in the customer care industry for close to 20 years, y'all. And I know that doesn't seem right because he doesn't look like, it could be 20 years. I don't know about his age. I may have to ask him about that later. I don't know about that. But he's worked with clients from Walmart, from Sprint Wireless, Home Depot, currently working as an employee with FIFA, and just wanted to let you know, James and his team have been recognized by Newsweek. I did say that, by Newsweek, Sprint Wireless, the Home Depot, as a leader within his respective industry. James has also managed contact centers domestically and internationally in places such as Belize, in Jamaica, in South Africa, and also the Philippines. He is a Six Sigma black belt. I'm just gonna take a pause right there because I don't have those credentials, and he got to let me know exactly like what does it take, because I know that is an intensive course. But he is a Six Sigma black belt in his respective field, and he has occupied senior leadership in leadership roles in training, in quality, and in operations, and also has aided in the development of contact centers of between, get this, you guys, 900 and 3,000 employees. I'm going to say that again because some of us used to working with like two people, three people, but he has worked with 900 to 3,000 employees with profit and loss endeavors up to $200 million. Okay. So aside from his, corporate experience, James was also a sports writer for 8 years, working with CBS Interactive and the Miami Heat, right? Dos Minutos. Like, I love the Heat. You could probably, and UD is now on like ESPN doing like sports analysts, and I'm just loving it. But I digress.
Yeah.
He also published his first book in 2015 called Get Out of Your Way. And so it is my esteemed pleasure and honor to welcome James Oyola. How are you, James?
I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. Great intro. Good job.
Hey, I tried. I tried. I was like, he got a lot of great accolades about him, and so I
Yeah,
need to make sure I say all of the good stuff.
thank you.
You're so welcome. So, James, tonight we are talking about from frustration to focus, right? How do you become a inside out leader? That is tonight's focus. And for anyone that is watching, okay, I wanted to let you know we're not just focusing on um, leadership as it relates to corporate America, because a lot of us are leaders in our home, a lot of us are leaders in our family, a lot of us are leaders in our friend group, right? And so how do you become a better leader personally and professionally? So we're going to have a certain level of balance, right? And it's all through the work of emotional intelligence. So there is a space for everyone at this table. So, James, I want to kind of start with one of the first things where we hear from a corporate America perspective, right? That statement that you hear in most offices, which says, check your emotions at the door. Can you please share with us your thoughts about that? That saying that is an expectation that most people really succumb to in the professional environment.
Yeah, thank you for asking. And before I do, thank you for having me on. I love what you're doing. Just, reaching out to the people, doing what you can to help empower, equip, and encourage. So thank you for letting me play a small role in this journey. Yeah,
Absolutely.
man, it's always irritated me, when I've heard leaders tell employees or their subordinates to leave your problems at the door. I understand the business philosophy of it. We have a job to do, we have a contract to satisfy. But man, it's a very insensitive and almost impossible task to ask somebody. And quite frankly, I don't even think the people who tell their people to do that themselves.
Right, exactly.
Almost humanly impossible to just turn off what we go through in our personal lives. And so when I hear that, I cringe, because putting myself in the employee's perspective, it doesn't make me feel like my superior cares about me,
Right,
not just as a professional, but also as a person.
right. And I think that's so important because what happens is that when we are, in these environments, right, where all of a sudden we are not, emotionally, when we're not able to emotionally experience things, what we're doing is we are suppressing, right? Because the one thing about emotions is emotions cannot be destroyed, they can only be transferred or converted.
Mhm.
So, like physically, it's not even possible,
Right.
right? You know, it's not possible to check your emotions at the door because they cannot be destroyed. So what they are is they are being suppressed, right? And then one thing that my mom says a lot is that all of a sudden you are in a situation where you are upset, at the job, and then you go home and you kick your dog, right? Because
Right. Right.
you go home and you kick your dog because of the fact that you've been suppressing all day, and now all of a sudden the dog comes up and wants to bite, and now all of a sudden you're angry at the dog. So James, especially for men, especially
Yeah.
for men, can you help us from a male perspective? Because I feel like a lot of men really do kind of hold in their emotions because of societal conditioning and
Yeah.
things of that nature. So can you speak to that? Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. It's funny you asked that. Just today, I'm a part of a fraternity, and on our Facebook group, someone posted a question about something Shaq said, Shaquille O'Neal said, something to the effect of like a man shouldn't cry in front of his wife
Mm,
because he will lose respect. She will lose respect for him if he did, and he should
wow.
handle it privately. And so that was the question of the day, to all the brothers. And man, I jumped in there because that's my speed right there is emotional intelligence. And I had to debunk. I'm Puerto Rican, and in our language we call that machismo. Like right, it's this deceptive form of what a man is. And so when you talk gender specific, for the record, man, it's okay for a man to cry in front of his wife, to cry in front of his children, because the reality is, you know, a husband, just in the context of marriage, is the leader of the family, and
Right.
effective leader, a great leader, is one that understands vulnerability.
Yeah.
You have to be willing to be vulnerable to lead people effectively. You have to be willing to be let down. You have to be willing to be abandoned. You have to be willing to be rejected. You have to embrace the reality that not everybody sees something the way you do. And that can be frustrating and cause people to quit. But that level of vulnerability really can also be a beacon for strength. And so, if we're not teaching our family, starting with our wives, our children, how do we navigate through our emotions, because in the spirit of what it means to be a man, we're doing it in private, then we're not really leading well. And so for men, I think, you know 35 years ago men didn't cry, which is the
Yeah.
biggest lie ever.
Mhm.
And so I love how, within the last 20 to 25 years, this movement and concept of being more in touch with our emotions. Counseling is becoming more prevalent now.
Yeah.
I'm a fan of it proactively. But as men, as leaders, not that men are only leaders, but if you're a
Right.
leader in your family, as a husband, as the high priest, as the Bible says, of your home, then we have to have our emotions controlled. We have to be able to govern them in a way that we're being a good example for everybody after us. And that does translate into the workplace in every aspect that any man would occupy.
James, I got to ask you this question because I hear this a lot, and you're saying some pretty rich things that really kind of goes against societal conditioning. You said embrace vulnerability,
Yeah.
embrace the feeling of possible rejection. A lot of people view vulnerability as a weakness. And so, like, what is the initiative, or what is the return of investment for someone that has to choose to be vulnerable, and when in their mind it's saying that there's a weakness that is there? Like, what's the incentive there?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it starts with identity.
Mm,
I think it starts with knowing who you are, and knowing who you're not.
right.
By virtue of that, whatever vulnerability looks like to the outside world, we don't subscribe to that, right?
Right.
So I think it's knowing the identity, and as far as a return on that decision, um, it's the grace necessary to allow everybody else to make mistakes,
Wow. Wow.
because the people that hurt you unintentionally, intentionally, the people who abandon, reject, they say things, everybody who's not emotionally intelligent around you, I have to have a level of strength and be willing to embrace some of those pain points, to be in a position to allow everyone else the grace to figure it out. If I throw in the towel on everyone who hurts me, I'm going to be standing alone in a big arena of my emotions with nobody to talk to.
Oh,
So I think we need to understand, if we want to be effective, not good leaders, not great leaders, but excellent leaders, leaders that make change, then we need to understand what environment and atmosphere are we setting for those around us.
wow.
And one that's layered with grace, which gives the other people room to make mistakes and
Wow.
recognize their intentional or unintentional deeds, starts with our ability to not get offended and be able to govern any feeling of abandonment or rejection in a healthy way.
Wow. There's so much to what you just said, but being able to operate from that place of vulnerability opens up a window to lead with grace. Wow. Like that is beautiful within itself, because you don't normally see grace and leadership in the same sentence.
Unfortunately, no.
So I just think it's so beautiful, because grace is something that you receive that you didn't earn,
Right.
right? You didn't earn it, and so you end up receiving it. And so the beautiful part about being able to be a leader, and the best leader is a leader that serves, not expecting things in response, right? And so a great leader is a selfless leader, right? And so there has to be a certain level of compassion and grace that needs to be shown to people on your team. Let's go to one of the other things that we experience in corporate America. One of the things that a lot of employers do is they try to increase the morale of their team,
Yeah.
right? By providing them with any some type of external stimuli, whether that is pool tables, whether that is cool decor, whether that is, and so, can you kind of talk about why? Because a lot of people focus on the external, allure of leadership versus focusing on the internal. And why is it important that we know the difference and we operate differently from that perspective?
Yeah, another good question. I think, in my opinion, what really separates a good leader from a great leader is someone who aspires to discover their team. Not everybody receives appreciation the same. Gary Chapman, I believe his name is, was the author of The Love Languages. Also wrote a book called The Five Languages of Appreciation in the Workplace.
Yeah.
And it's a spin-off to Love Languages, but it's kind of developed for the workplace.
Right.
And what I love about the book is that it's true statistically too. For those of you who lead teams, I recommend you do a book study with your supervisors and managers, and go through it. You can actually do the study, learn the language. But the point is, five different people on my team may feel valued five different ways.
Right.
And if I just think throwing a pizza party at all five is going to make them feel appreciated, or subs, or gift cards to Walmart or whatever, you
Yeah.
know, the things that is easy for me to get, or even not easy for me to get, but it's just these, like, that might not translate to everybody. You know what I
Right.
mean? And so I think in the large corporate settings that I've been in, granted, you can't, for 150 people, 3,000 people, you can't do an individual thing for all.
Right. Absolutely.
But at the very least, we can take a poll, we could take surveys, right? And we can
Yeah.
use some of that data from the workforce to say, okay, top five, is this, this, and this. And then we have 12 months in a year and we can figure it out. But at least there's intentionality.
Right.
And so it's really caught there. It's in the intention. Do I care enough to want to know how Joanna feels valued and appreciated, and speak that language to her? Or do I just need to check off my list that I rewarded her hard work, and hey, here's this pizza party, and if you're not satisfied, then you're just someone who's ungrateful. You know what I mean? Like, it's a little unfair to put someone in that category without understanding, the human mind and the human heart.
Absolutely. And I love that you said that, because even if we take it from a personal standpoint, and how a lot of people are not motivated by the same value, just like you said, the five love language, right?
Yeah.
For So here it is, as a leader of the house, you are trying to, buy your kids and overcompensate maybe for areas in which you fell short as a parent. So now you want to try to overcompensate, and you want to get them whatever it is to make them happy, but you're not checking their homework,
Right.
but you're not going to the PTA meetings,
Right.
but you're not spending time. There's so many people that are out there that their mother or their father is in the home, but they're not present.
Hmm.
But they're buying them. I got a degree. I'm working in a hospital. I'm making good money. And their son has all the Jordans. They have all of the track suits. They have everything, that a child could want. And then they wonder when that child, becomes a teenager or in middle school, they are very rebellious, right? Because they have not tapped into the emotional aspect and being able to find out what does a child truly want. A child truly wants your time.
Very true.
I know it's not a sexy answer, right? But time is the most valuable commodity on this earth, just like in the professional environment, right? And employees want your time and they want your attention. They want to know that they are not just a number, that they are not just a placeholder. They want to know, hey, my child just graduated this week, and were you aware?
Right.
Right? They want to know, hey, I haven't been at work because I actually lost, a loved one. They want you to have some type of human connectivity. And I think that because people don't have the emotional maturity, they feel like I don't want to get into those places because then all of a sudden, how do I handle that? What do I say?
Right.
So, how can we help people that are even in that situation where they want to try to do more, but they just don't know how to do it?
Yeah, it's good. I was talking to my dad about this yesterday because, sometimes, we avoid. Well, let me put a pin in that. I want to go back to what you said about the kids. You know, yes, time is, we're either going to invest money or time, and a lot of parents
Yes,
compensate for time with money. And what time says to my 19-year-old, my 17-year-old, my 6-year-old, and my 4-year-old, even my wife, what time says to the people who love me and I love is I matter.
right.
Like the time I spent with them tells them from my action, they matter
Yeah,
to me. And
yeah,
that's what they want. And that's what our employees and our peers, they want to know they matter.
right.
Right. You talked about leadership being servant leadership. I love that because the visual there is like the inverted pyramid,
Yes,
where the CEOs and the COOs and the senior directors, they're at the bottom serving the frontline associates and employees. And man, it's great for those people, like you said, to experience moments where they know, well, I matter at
yeah,
this 5,000 person company.
yeah,
I matter. Wow, like the COO stopped and said hello. My boss's boss knows my name. I matter because
yeah,
ultimately goes back to identity. It helps fill any gaps that people have. And so
yeah,
I was talking to my dad. I was sharing a situation I had with a family member where, I indirectly hurt someone, but I love that person. And I was avoiding reaching out because I thought they didn't want to talk to me. And so it was in counseling that,
yeah.
I was encouraged to be like, hey, do you love this person? And I was like, yeah. And they're like, well, you need to reach out. And I'm like, yeah, but what if they don't reach back? And they're like, well, don't let that stop you from doing what you want to do. And so for me, that was a blessing for me because it's like, I can get in my own way. I can over anticipate and it prevent me from being who I'm called to be. If
Yeah.
we're all called to be, leaders of ourselves first
Yes.
and
Oh,
of one another. And so I think what separates good leader from a not or healthy leader from an unhealthy leader are really choices. And so I think, it's kind of to your question, you know, um, we have to, and this goes back to corporate. The bigger picture is results.
yes.
In sports, you have the good coaches. They say they're a player's coach.
Yes.
Right? Like the players love playing for him.
Yes.
But the coach has to be intentional at creating that environment. Sometimes
Absolutely.
you get in the face of your star players. Sometimes you challenge people. Sometimes you take the weakest person on the team and you move them to the front so that they can have an experience they otherwise would never have. Great players, LeBron James, Michael Jordan, one of the main things said about all great players in team sports is that they make everybody around them better.
Yeah.
So these are two concepts that aren't just individual, but they're actions that help the overall. So what we're talking about, being intentional, making people feel like they matter, and it shouldn't be a fake thing. I really should genuinely care about the human being that works with me. You're not going to have a 1 hour conversation with everyone, but at the very least, I agree with you. You should know at least one or two facts about everyone on your team. At,
Yes.
at least.
At least one or two facts.
Yeah.
And I love, because that really gets us, segue us to the next point, because at the end of the day, if you are putting in the effort but you're not putting in the right effort, who is the effort benefiting? So one of the last areas that I wanted us to kind of debunk, so many people in corporate America, boy, they just be working, and they just be working, and they wake up in the morning and they check their emails, and they stay late, and they go to work early, and they take work with them home. They just work hard, right? And they think that because they work hard, that that is going to make them successful. And so you hear that, James, and you think, what? Does working hard make you successful?
I think it can. I think it also depends on what's someone's definition of success.
Right.
It's very subjective, because not having reached the finish line yet, but having gotten one step closer on a Wednesday to the goal that we have for Friday could mean a successful Wednesday.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that it wasn't successful because we're not at Friday yet and we haven't crossed the finish line. And so I do believe it can, working hard, persistence, it's
Yeah.
perseverance, right? It's like, I love the ant, like the insect, the ant, hardest working creature on earth. And there's so much that we can learn from an ant. And so there's nothing wrong with working hard, but I will go back to the motivation. Why? Why are we working hard? And so, no, working hard doesn't translate to success, in my opinion. It can lead to it, but I also, like, I don't want to be so focused on the loaf that I what's the word? I underestimate the crumbs.
Right.
Like, and
Wow.
sometimes I think in corporate America, in life, in ministry, wherever it may be, we're so focused on the loaf. We're so focused on that home run that, base hits don't matter anymore. We're so focused
Yeah.
on, scoring points that, taking charges in the game of basketball don't matter anymore. And so there are little wins, there are little things, as they say in sports, the things that don't end up on a stat sheet
Yeah.
that matter. And so when we come
Yeah.
to success, for me personally, in my field and my experience, and I think a day that I've made my team feel like they're a part of the overall goal, feel better about themselves as people and
Right.
professionals, and we've collaborated and we're one step closer to the task at hand, to me, that's a successful day.
And the flip side of that is, if you are working 12, 14 hours a day, if you're taking work home, you have family at home,
Right. Right.
right? You have responsibilities at home.
Right.
And so you've already given your job 10, 12 hours, and now you bring that home. Something or someone is going to get the short end of the stick. And at the end of the day, when that job comes to knock on your door and tell you that you are no longer needed for the company, then you realize, oh shoot, right? I've been putting so much focus on the job. Me and my wife is on the verge of divorce. My kids have been having behavioral issues, right? Because I haven't been there to help them with their homework. Now, academically, they are not doing well, all because you are trying to chase a dollar.
Right.
instead of saying, how can I be able to put a certain level of balance, right, in this story? So, like you said, working hard, right, it is something that is important. However, there has to be a level of balance within that, right? Because if there's no balance, then there's going to be, of course, burnout, right? So I so appreciate, that you shared that. Yeah, you were going to say something else.
Yeah, to that point too, the biggest deception and frustration point is when the family, let's say, let's use a mother, right? let's
Yeah.
let's flip roles here for everybody watching. The mother is the workaholic, right? And the dad's at home. So when the dad and the three kids are upset at the mom because she's working all day and she doesn't have time for the family, the mom might be on some, I'm doing this for you guys. And so there's where the deception is. She
Ooh,
thinks she's doing it for the family. And hypothetically, there could be some truth to that. But maybe there's also a lack of a blindness towards her own motor, her own desire for success, whatever he or she feels they need to prove to their employer or themselves. But it's deceptive because they're like, no, I'm doing this for you guys. You guys are
wow.
ungrateful. Like that's why I'm working 14-hour shifts. It's
Wow.
a great point that you make because in that respect, it's counting the cost, right?
Yeah.
Are we counting the cost? Doesn't mean, listen, if we need to put in time, let's put in time. It's like discipline, right? I'm
Yes.
I'm an advocate for physically disciplining your child when necessary, but the discipline should never outweigh the love.
Right. Absolutely.
My child
Absolutely.
knows that they will be disciplined by me if it's a consequence worth having. But
Yes.
what they'll never doubt is my love for them.
Yeah.
And so when we talk about balance, when we talk about order, right? I think that's really what it is. If you got to put in overtime, you got to do what you got to do for the mom who's, a CEO of her company and you're traveling all the time and you're in three different countries, four times a year, and your family barely sees you. Like, man, you are doing what you got to do and it's commendable because that's exhausting. But like you said, at the expense of what?
Right. Is it that important? Right. And I think sometimes culturally, depending on where we're from, sometimes culturally, people feel like they are lazy if they're not working three jobs, 10 hours a day, in on in, and I think it's unfortunate. I've had so many conversations, specifically with women, where if they weren't working, they didn't see themselves with value.
Right.
And this comes the emotional intelligence aspect of it, because what's driving your decision making? We know emotions drive 80 to 90% of the decisions that we make. And so is, the insecurities, that, or the cultural upbringing, is that attitude and that belief driving your decision making? That's really tough. And so we have to do something about it. So I know that there are a lot of people that is joining via YouTube, via Facebook, and I want to open up the floor really quickly for a few minutes. And if there's any people that is joining and you have a couple of questions, I saw some of you, saying different things. Sharon in corporate America, we think food fixes everything. You know,
It's I
you
love
know,
I love to eat. Say
that food is the way to people's heart. And then Chris says suppressed emotions show up somewhere.
hmm,
I want you, if you can, throw a question inside of the chat, and then so that way, if you have any questions regarding leadership of corporate America, this is the time where you can get it out now. And I really want to challenge you, for everyone that is in here today. I want you to think about this. All right. You can do this homework assignment. You don't have to do it. I'm just challenging you to do it. My challenge to you is wherever you are showing up as a leader, I want you to take inventory. Go to your family. Ask them, what are the ways, what are three strengths that makes you a great leader? What are some of the things that you do that makes you a great leader? What are some of the things in which you can improve in being a great leader? Get feedback from your family and friends about your strengths and your areas of opportunity. If you are in corporate America, go to your team, ask them, how are you as a leader? Three strengths, three areas of opportunity. What that's going to do is that's going to give you insight to maybe some blind spots that you may have that you didn't recognize before. So I want to kind of, as a trainer, I like to give homework assignments, but so that way you can have some level of data and information to drive you to be a better leader. So I want to ask anybody inside the chat right now any questions on anything that we have talked about before. One thing that I do want to also share is James did also um, write a book, and I'm going to share the screen really quick. He wrote a book which is called Get Out of Your Own Way, because a good leader has to be aware of himself first,
Yeah.
right? So, James, can you just tell us a little bit about this book and why was it so important for you to write this book in this season?
Yeah. I want to say something though before I get to
Yeah,
that.
absolutely.
Remind me, while people were writing their question, we all need to have PhDs in our people. We need to study our people.
Wow.
You just had a writer's strike, and it slowed Hollywood and the movie and the TV industry down. If
Wow.
players don't play in the league, you will have a players strike. So if you're a director or a senior director manager with no team, you don't accomplish the goal.
Right.
So as we study for the bar to be an attorney, as we study for all these, we become extremely knowledgeable in pathways to get to careers, but we become very what's the word, illiterate and unintelligent when it comes to people. We need to study our family. We need to
Yeah.
study our spouses and our children. We
Right.
need to study our employees. And by study, I mean remember what we say to them, because they are our greatest source. They are the resource that we need the most. And so I felt that just in my heart. I really wanted to share because we're all studying something. There's a lot of people on here that are reading books to be better in their field of choice, or they're taking classes, or we're all trying to improve ourselves in some way. But how many of us are trying to improve ourselves with people being the subject?
Wow.
I think when we start seeing people as subjects and not as objects,
Ooh.
then we can transition from
Wait,
being
rewind that? We need to see people as what? You need to, that's a bar right there. We need to see people as what?
about to get into the booth after this. We need to start seeing people as subjects and not as objects. And when we do that, that's when we really grow and transition into being an effective leader, like sports, someone who makes everybody around them better, someone who's a player's coach. And transitioning to the book, I'm a Christian man, faith based. The Lord put it in my heart to share my story, my testimony. Everybody has a purpose. Every single human being in this world, in the history of this world, was born with a purpose, and not everybody walks as if they know that or they want to know that. And so it took me about 3 years to write. And using my testimony and my story, I just wanted to encourage people to get out of their own way, like I did for much of my life, and to some extent, I'm still learning how not to do. Because as you see, with the image you're sharing, the tallest mountain we'll ever climb is the mountain of self. And so for us, we have to get over that mountain. We have to be willing to climb that mountain. in order to get out of our own way. Our purpose is always going to be greater than ourselves. And that's the premise of
Yeah.
the book. And obviously, the backbone of learning the purpose is through understanding who we are in Christ and what his word says about us and who he says we are. And that's really the framework to understanding my identity. And I think that will translate when we get to that place into our respective work or our ministry or our family. You don't have to be a CEO to be an effective leader.
Right.
You could be a CEO, you could be the mother with 4 children,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter. It's wherever you are, how are you making an impact with whoever is around? And that takes intentionality.
It really does because we get comfortable with the people that are around us.
Yeah,
We actually sometimes we do more for the people that are outside of our circle. Sometimes we have more patience with people at work. Sometimes we are able to extend more trust and cooperation with people that are at work than your daughter coming and saying, "Hey, can we go grab ice cream tonight?"
right.
Where's the trust and the cooperation there? Right. And I'm guilty of that because, I'm guilty of that too. But it is really seeing people for who they are and not just for what they can do for you. Right. And so I love when you said, see people as subjects and not objects, and the way in which you'll be able to tap into that space and see people as a subject is maybe there's going to be some things on the inside of you that you're going to have to clean up first, because it's really hard to give what you don't have.
Right. Right.
It's hard to love people when love wasn't instilled in you, right? Or if you don't have the capacity, to be able to treat people a certain way, then it's hard to be able to do that. And so, one of the things that is so important with the book that I have, Heart Work of the Soul, is doing that internal work. Listen, we all have traumas, whether they the big T or the small T. According to adverse childhood experiences by the CDC, if you were raised in the household where there was divorce, if one of your parents were incarcerated, if you were one of your parents died, if you lived in an area that was poverty stricken, if you suffer from any type of abuse, emotional, physical, sexual, that's five already. And I guarantee you, there's people in here that have experienced multiple of those five.
Hmm.
So, how can we lead in our family? How can we lead professionally when life is leading us? It's
Can I
just not
can I
possible.
ask you something? Can I share something to that?
Ab-
I love what you said, and it goes back to the object and subject, because if we have those voids,
Yeah,
we're gonna use people and things to fill them as we grow,
absolutely.
and that's where people become objects. You use objects. You seek to understand subjects,
Yeah,
and so that was me. I had some of those five that you mentioned. I probably got about three of them,
yeah,
and as I grew and I had giftings and talents, but I also had pains and brokenness. And I used people and situations to cope with my pain and brokenness.
yeah,
And I hurt people. And the biggest hurt that I caused myself was being labeled as
yeah,
someone who I didn't feel in my heart I was. And
yeah,
that's where the work began in me. Realizing, like, wait a minute, like, I'm hurting people and I don't mean to. Sometimes I did mean to, but as the Lord found me and started to heal my heart and show me, through counseling, through prayer, through being discipled, through mentorship, um, yeah, like, it's we cope everything, the pursuit of a career, wanting to have a family, wanting.
yeah,
We're not careful, the motivations for why we want whatever we want could be influenced by our pain.
Absolutely.
And if we go down that route, nothing is ever going to be enough until we
And
heal and do the hard work. Like,
yes, the is, on top of that, not only do we hurt the people that we're in close contact with, but now that becomes a behavioral pattern that our kids pick up, that our kids pick up.
yeah.
And now we've created this generational pattern of abuse. And it's just, I just believe right now is the time where you're going to have to choose like what you're going to do. Like nobody could say, I didn't know anymore. There's a lot of information that is out there now.
Mhm.
And nobody can just say, I didn't know, right? Everybody has a responsibility. If you don't have a responsibility to yourself, my God, do it for your child. Do it for your children's children. We're supposed to be leaving an inheritance for our children's children. Well, if, okay, a lot of the time, okay, I'm setting up, my 401k, I'm setting up, plans for them. Okay, that's money. But what else are you passing down? Are you passing down toxic behaviors? Yeah, I mean, we can probably go all night with this, but we just got to be aware. And I think the work that you do in discovering yourself, discovering your purpose, I truly believe when you're walking in your purpose, you're thriving, right? And if you don't know what your purpose is and what you're doing, you definitely want to get this book. If you want to break generational patterns, if you want to show up to life with and thrive and not create generational patterns, Heart Work of the Soul is your go-to book. Now, I do have one question in here before we end for the evening, James. Jella asked, as a leader, how do you handle conflict within a team? This is a really good question. How do you handle conflict within a team?
Yeah, that's a great question. Very good question. Thank you for asking. Yeah, so in my experience, how I would handle conflict within a team, I think the first thing is I need to understand what's going on. I need to really get all the facts. I'm a proponent of, and I've done this many times in my career. If it's two people conflict, I need to talk to one person. I need to get their version of the situation. Then I need to talk to the other person, and I might need to sit for a day.
Right.
I might need to marinate, and ruminate on that information because I'm not exempt from making emotional decisions. I'm not exempt from being in my feelings, and so I think one of the first things is assessing the situation, identifying the problem, and in the spirit of healthy conflict resolution, is inviting both parties to talking about it, creating an invitation, creating a space to discuss. Some they may not want to do that, but I think if there is a desire for reconciliation or resolution, rather, it's inviting them. And if there's not a desire for resolution, then all you can do is work with the one who does want to figure it out. Or if both of them are kind of in their feelings and they don't want to, then you exercise your authority as the leader to now set the expectations of what can and cannot happen on the
There
work.
you go.
Like if you guys don't want to work it out, fine. But here's how this is gonna go moving forward. Like
Yes.
I don't want none of this to blow up. I'm giving you a chance to work it out. Ain't gonna be no, like in my mom's day or in the 80s, in no parking lot, no Vaseline on the face and none of that. So yeah, it's communication, it's transparency, it's willingness. It takes one to forgive. And I
Yeah.
learned this in counseling. It takes one to forgive, but two to reconcile.
Mm.
And a good leader needs to discern that and do their best to take action if the situation permits. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't, but we need to make the best call because we also have to protect the integrity of the team and the business.
I am typing inside the chat what you just said
You type it
because
on.
I think it is beautiful. And one of the things that you said, it takes one to forgive, but two to reconcile.
Yeah.
And I want to put a pin right there because one of the things that, is so important is forgiveness.
Mm.
Forgiveness of self, forgiveness of family, forgiveness of friends.
Yeah.
I mean, and people think that when you forgive, then that should bring about reconciliation. And it
Mhm.
just doesn't work that way, right? And so you do have to be open because at the end of the day, forgiveness is absolutely vital to your overall health and development. Like, if anybody were to just type inside Google, show me the impacts to your physical and mental health concerning unforgiveness. We're talking about dementia, we're talking about heart disease, all of these physical ailments because of unforgiveness. And
Yeah.
so, look, if there is anybody that is out there today and you are watching and you know that you have something in your heart concerning someone else, please, like, let it go. Let it go and let God process that, and have a conversation with them, just like James was saying. Conflict starts with having a conversation. And a lot of the times we don't have the conversation because we feel like we were right in the conflict.
Right.
I said what I said, right? I did everything right. Like, what, And there's always three sides to every story: my side, the other person's side, and the truth. And so, James, I want to thank you so much for coming on here and providing a balanced meal of personal and professional leadership. And so, any closing thoughts or any closing words before we end the cast for this evening?
Yeah, I would just encourage, and again, thank you for having me. I really appreciate the time and the discussion. I just encourage anyone to not take wherever they are for granted. Whether we've talked a lot about leadership, and we use a lot of senior roles, but whether you're a janitor, you're a leader. Whether you're a data
Yes.
analyst, you're a leader. Whether you are a $9 an hour employee, you're a leader. Or $150,000 a year employee, you're a leader. Leadership is not defined by role. Man gives men titles, but God gives men purpose. And
Yeah.
wherever you are in your life, whatever occupation, whatever role you play, regardless of what it is, you have an opportunity to lead. And first, it's yourself, and then it's
Yeah.
the people around you. But effective leadership is more caught than taught.
Yes.
So the last thing I would say is be the example. Be the example. Whatever your values are, live it out. Whatever your standard is, live it out. Let them see it lived out in you. And then hopefully you have one. It only takes one or two that everybody's not going to follow.
No.
But if you just have one or two, then it's all you need to influence another one or two. And before you know it, you're making a significant impact, not only in the lives of people, but like you said, Joanna, the lives of their children and their children and their children, because it's
Yeah.
greater than just you and I. And so
Yeah.
that's all I really wanted to share.
Thank you so much. Listen, if you are watching this cast, it is your time and it is your opportunity to make a difference in your corner. Don't blame your mama. Don't blame your trauma. Don't blame your sister, your leader. You keep showing up to all of those places. If you want to truly be a great leader, not only at work, but at home, take inventory of how you were shown leadership skills. How did your mom treat you? How did your dad treat you? Are you are you doing those same behaviors that they did. And is that good? Is that bad? There has to be self evaluation, or you will continue to do the same thing expecting a different response. And so I just challenge everyone, take inventory of where you are. Where did you learn leadership? And then begin to ask the people around you, how is the leadership that you've been displaying? Ask your kids. Ask your kids, mom, son, daughter, how have I been a leader? What did I show you that you are going to do when you get older? What did I display? Right? And what is the area that I need to work on? See, we don't want to have those conversations, but they are absolutely vital to our success. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Thank you again, James. And I will see you guys next time on our emotional intelligence series. Have a wonderful night, and I'll see you later. Bye bye.
Bye, everybody.